Hello, I'm now back with Fat City, which is a John Huston film from 1971. It was based on a novel that was one of those novels that had been written earlier that a lot of people wanted to adapt. It was like a very working class book about boxers, and a lot of people thought it'd be a really good film. But getting the adaptation was always going to be a problem because it was character based rather than story based. Like the story was the characters and how they acted, how they made mistakes. That was what the film was about, and people's lives and the story would go in directions that were not very friendly towards adaptation. So that was the major issue with the film getting adapted. But at some point, John Huston, after my proof in hands, John Huston got it, and he got basically the writer of the book had written the script, and Houston liked what he saw. Houston used to be a boxer, so he understood the um, sensibility of amateur boxing, the passion of amateur boxing. So this was a film that he understood the world of. Now Houston, by this point, had been a director who had done some great stuff and some bad stuff. He had been through films that he seemed really bored with. They were very bloated and hated. He'd done some films that that were adored. I need stuff that was in between. He was a director who could go anyway in a film. You're never quite sure where he was going to go. This was a bit. Fat City was one of those films that had him heading in a direction where he would make some other really good films towards the end of his career. So you had Wise Blood as well, The Man Who Would Be King. You would have Fritz's Honor. So this was the start of him coming back from the 60s, but he had not had the greats of 60s, but he started to kind of come back a little bit more with this one. And it just, one of those films, it's just wonderful. It just works perfectly. But it's a film, if you're looking for a plot, you're going to be disappointed. It's not a plotty film. It's about the environment of these fighters. That's all it's about. It's all it cares about is this environment. So you have Stacey Keach as this boxer who's past his prime. And for a boxer, that means late 20s. If you've messed up and you can't really get the motivation together. Your late 20s, you're considered past it. And Stacey Keach played a guy who was viewed as someone who had a lot of potential. But the potential just went to booze and went to women. And basically, he was married and he got a divorce. He lost all his money to his ex-wife. And now he's an alcoholic and he's barely surviving. So while he's working out at a YMCA, he sees Jeff Bridges, who's this other young guy who's just working out there just to do something. And he says to him, he spars with him and says, "You have a special skill." So he recommends him to this actual pro boxer, like at the very basic level of like pro boxing. Just go there, say I sent you. And then when this guy sees Jeff Bridges, he thinks, "Oh yeah, he's got potential. If he works hard, he might be something." So Jeff Bridges is into that. Well, we stay with Stacey Keach, so you're actually staying with a guy who's having a problem. And Stacey Keach is a guy who spends way too much time in bars. He ends up meeting Susan Tyrrell, who's a drunk, and he's got a lot of problems of her own. He tries to get work, just doing like manual labour on farms and things like that. And he's just miserable, and you can tell he's just hating his life, and he cannot find any reason to go on, but just out of pure survival basically, he'll keep going. At the same time, you're intercutting that with little moments of Jeff Bridges' life. He's got a girlfriend too, and she's kind of much smarter than she lets on, and she will lead him down the road of certain areas. So he's doing good at his boxing, but he's not amazing. He's going to have to really work at it, and he's tries to really put the work in, which he's not going to do with this other distraction. He's not motivated because he has real life. It's not like he's thrown at everything but the boxing. So she ends up getting pregnant, and he ends up having to quit for a while, and then eventually starts to go back to boxing slowly but surely over time. But you get a sense of his, as the film goes on, that his potential is not been lived up to, just like Stacey Keats' potential. So Stacey Keats tries to come back as well. At this point, he's living with Susan Terrell, whose boyfriend has gone to jail. Now, she's with Stacey Keats for a bit, and they're very dysfunctional. They're both alcoholics. Stacey Keats is trying to get better. She's dragging him down, but he seems addicted to people who are not going to help him. It seems like he just cannot choose someone who's good for him. And he's got a lot of weaknesses that need protecting. And so he's one of those people who can be motivated for a short time, be very motivated, be very hardworking for a short time, and then his mind drifts away, and his willpower drifts away. And it's easier just to keep going back to the booze and going back to fantasy land and going back to depression. And basically the film's about losers. So because basically you can sense that Jeff Bridges' character is going to basically become Stacey Keats' character. And Stacey Keats' character was sort of like Jeff Bridges. And they're both going to end up miserable. And Stacey Keats' character is going to be lucky to survive till he's 40 because he's just a drunk. And there's lots of people around the city that they see who are drunks and who are basically begging for money. And it's like, what creates these people? What's the thing that creates these people? And it's a lack of dedication. It's a lack of interest in things that they can really put their soul into. It's about just a certain lack within them that's heartbreaking because you can tell they've got talent. You can tell they have some willpower, but they can't really keep it going. They fall away over time into just apathy and depression. So it shows you what someone who's not a total pro is, like someone who's like a part-timer in his life is, because these are people who will never make it to the full, to actually to their dream, because they can't really get motivated long term because life gets in the way, and they feel obliged by life to actually take care of people and actually try and be decent people. And then when those people aren't nice back to them, that messes them up as well, and it becomes this whole thing of why am I doing this? Why am I a sucker? And that just takes them into a spiral of self-destruction, self-pity, and there's a sense of they haven't cut themselves off to their art, so they've a foot in both the world and what they think is their art, which is boxing, and they're not committed to either, and there's going to be small timers who are going to be failures ultimately. They just can't quite commit to what they're doing, what they want, what's their ultimate goal. So that's their failure. That's why they're not going to succeed. And the film is beautiful for this because it's about that sensibility of why people don't succeed. It's also very sympathetic towards it. It's like, this is the way most people live their lives. The people who succeed are the rare freaks who get beyond this. But 99.9% of people are the people who have to have their foot in the world and whatever they're passionate about. And they can't commit to both, and they feel frustrated and depressed and desperate. And nothing quite goes their way. And that's just life. And that's the life most people live. And that's the life of most people in this town. And the cities beyond it is just life. So it's just looking at the people who end up in bars all the time, the people who just end up homeless or depressed, and just saying, look, this is just something that happens. This is just a phenomena that's inherent in human behavior, because human behavior, shows your weaknesses, shows your failures, shows your patterns of behavior that will not lead to a good outcome. And a lot of people aren't observant enough of their own behavior. They think they know something about themselves, but they ultimately don't know enough about their own patterns to avoid certain things. They fall into self-pity quite easily. They don't have support patterns to actually keep them going through the rough times. They're kind of loners. I mean, boxers tend to be loners. They tend to be isolated. That's what makes you a boxer. But it means you can't really integrate into society either in a way that's healthy for you. So you've got kind of split personality in a way. So it's a wonderful film, which is about the phenomenon of boxers who fail, but it could be anyone who fails in any profession. So it's a beautiful film, really gorgeous. Indicator have released it. I would highly recommend you try and track it down because it is just one of the most beautiful 70s films, and it's underrated because people just don't talk about it enough. Because I mean, Stacey Keach is not a big actor. Jeff Bridges is, but even then, it's viewed as an early Jeff Bridges film, not a major Jeff Bridges film from his early part of his career. So it's something that's definitely worth catching up with because it's just beautiful and very dark, but wonderful human. Some great acting scenes throughout it. I mean, all the scenes are great because Huston apparently gave the actors space. Understanding they understood the scenes. Once they knew they understood the scenes, we'd give them space so they could be as naturalistic as possible. They would just adjust slightly if he needed to. So he had a lot of trust in his actors and his crew, really. So this is wonderful. Just go see it, is my point. I'll be back very soon for the fall of Echo Castle. Right, bye for now.